This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. At least on the East Coast. Further west, obviously, it's late morning. But thanks for everybody for making the call today, and thanks, John, for setting this up. And it looks like we got probably one of the fullest agendas we've had in a long time. So definitely got utilized the time accordingly. So I don't think Ken has dialed in yet, and John, you don't see Ken on there either, right?
That's correct. I do not see him.
Okay.
I'll see if I can contact him by text here.
Do we, with that being said, I see Todd's on. Do we want to just go ahead and jump down to Todd in the VLab outreach activities?
Absolutely.
Okay. Todd, is that okay with you?
Perfect. So this will be real quick, but I just wanted to highlight three things at this point for the purpose of this meeting. The first is as most know, and several attended that are on this call, we did a outreach event on October 31st. The invite and notice went out to all weather service managers. We had about, at its peak, I think I saw 68, 70 attendees. It was about a 1-hour webinar session that myself, Steve, and Ken did. It's recorded and it's now posted on the VLab homepage. If anyone missed it, you'll see it next time you go out on vlab.ncep.noaa.gov, the recorded video. The next event we're planning will be with Kate, and so for mid-December, we're shooting for around December 12th. Several VLab support team members are going to be actually in the DC area that week. So working with Kate to schedule a couple hours out at the College Park facility for a few sessions there. It'll be sessions with some very experienced VLab users that we want to hear their challenges and make sure that we communicate upcoming changes we're making for them that would in consideration of their efforts. And then there's also other offices there, including outside of Weather Service, that reside there that we're going to be trying to schedule as best we can to get everyone in an auditorium room if they're available. It's around the holidays is tough, but we're going to try. So that'll be December 12th, plus or minus a day. Then after the holidays, I'm working with David Beechler on a central region event out of Kansas City. That will probably be that week of January. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but I think it'd be probably the week of January 14th. A couple of us from the VLab support team will travel to Kansas City, but the objective is to do an outreach event there. There's hundreds of employees in Kansas City also outside of Weather Service that we want to coordinate with, but virtually all of the Central Region WFO offices we plan to invite as well. And we may or may not, depending on need and desire, be scheduling specific WFO site visits then in the subsequent months. That's all I had.
Hey, Todd, one of the things that Brian and I had talked about offline about the Weather Service side, and we're wondering if maybe a good idea might be to send out some sort of a Google form to the managers, maybe getting some feedback that way as maybe a means to kind of get more input, and that may work for some reason. It may not work for all. I know for Central Region it might be advantageous, but that was something that could help steer the outreach and fine tune how to do the outreach in specifically targeted areas. I don't know if that's something you guys have tossed around.
No, we've totally talked about it. We're approaching a couple of different ways. The first, so say for your Central Region, when we get a little further along, I actually already have the survey done, and I need to share it with you to get some of your feedback. But we'll plan to figure out a way to send that to all available staff. And of course, you don't get the response you get's hit or miss, but we found that when we did Norman, Oklahoma, that survey gave us a great idea of the challenges that staff had. So we actually went into those sessions prepared. I'll give an example. So the OAR office in Norman, Oklahoma, the NSSL lab, they weren't really heavy VLab users, and they were already using other tools in some other areas. For example, web content, they're a WordPress shop. So we weren't expecting them, knowing that coming in, we're not expecting them to have a huge need for LifeRay because they already meet their needs through WordPress. So that's the kind of thing we try to learn in advance. Likewise, I'm going to try to do the same thing for the College Park event. Now, as far as outside of those planned events, how or who can we hit across weather service? I think we have talked about it. We didn't want to spam mail like 6,000 people. But so what we just didn't decide yet is who would we target? So for example, I think one logical thing could be the 70 people that attended the webinar 2 weeks ago, right? Maybe that's a group because there was at least some level of interest to hear what we were saying. Maybe that's a good group to find out about. But no, we talk about it all the time, and we're trying to figure out the right balance to target properly. It's a good question.
So Todd, my feeling here is we'll do the targeting. The VIT will do the targeting. We can do it for you. I mean, that's the purpose of the VIT.
So in other words, you would, in your case, representing Eastern region, you would take the lead to figure out how to and who to target on your end in terms of state.
Yeah, like I'm not against a webinar or an outreach type event. In concept, I am very hesitant to do something without first clarifying exactly what we're going to be doing, getting more feedback, which we already get, at least I do in Eastern region, and getting the feedback and working with you and Steve and others to set up something that's going to be beneficial. I just don't want another webinar, another survey, just for the purposes of doing that. I want something that is going to improve the VLab and also allow us to figure out what it is users need and what it is users want.
Sure. No, that's so, and I probably wasn't saying it effectively, but when I'll just use the Norman, Oklahoma event as another example. The one group we met with, the training division, and we weren't doing outreach for the sake of outreach. They're already using VLab. In fact, there's some of our heavy users, especially on the LifeRay side. So that discussion was tweaked. We weren't selling VLab. What we were doing was going in and saying, hey, we know you've had some challenges, and we in this case, Ken spent a lot of time going through what specific, enhancements and plans we had for upcoming releases in our milestone planning that would address it. I agree 100%. I think every audience is going to be different. I think College Park will be a great example of like EMC hardcore users, especially of our Redmine and Git repos. We're not going in to do a dog and pony show to say, hey, look at how great VLab is. It's going to be totally different, targeted because they're experienced users. We want to better understand what their problems are. Let them tell us also in person. They may have already through logging an issue, but it's nice to sometimes have FaceTime with a group.
Sure.
Let them hear it, and then we leave, and then we of course try to do a good job making sure it's not just an empty visit, and we follow up and want to make sure. The other thing, just kind of tied to outreach, and Ken and I have talked about this for a few weeks now, is what we're trying to do better is making a transparent milestone plan for everybody, not just the VIT, but all users, so that you see what enhancements and releases when we're pushing changes out and fixes. We want to better. I mean, at this call, we talk about specific issues the VIT might have asked for and have been resolved, but there's a lot of other things going on, and so we're talking about the best way to do that, like maybe like a monthly release type schedule where we're saying, hey, this past month we did these 20 things. Here's what's planned for the next 20. So it kind of all ties together to just improve what we're doing. But those are all.
No, I'm totally on board with that. I mean, I've asked for that because I don't think that the VIT issues capture even half of what is going on. And
I think it's probably 20%. I think it's probably 20%. So it's
I think a couple of things. I think this is a good conversation, and I think that some of the things that you brought up kind of point out some of the issues. For example, when you work with the training division, that's great. They're a big user, but one of the reasons they don't know what's going on is because they have no connection to the VIT. They have we still don't have a headquarters representative. We don't have anybody who's communicating with them, an in between, a go between. That's why the VIT exists.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the issues there. Again, going to EMC, working with Kate, and continuing the feedback cycle and figuring out what they need, that's perfect. Same thing I'd want to do for all regions, because I do believe that all regions have the same usage of VLab, or at least in general have the same usage of VLab. I want to work as a go-between, and in collaboration with the outreach and the VLab support team and the VIT to figure out what it is that's missing, follow up on the webinar, follow up with things. I mean, we did a survey about a year ago. It's about time to do some follow up, and also work again with you to show. I talked with David about this. Show use cases. Show what are some of the people doing out there. I mean, those are the things to get people to use it in the ways that they can use it. I'm totally fine with that. I just think that I'd be interested in working more on figuring out some ways to survey without being with being respectful of people's time and too overbearing. But let's figure that out. Let's work together. Let's work on some of these things like timelines, schedules, overarching what it is that that we're hearing from our users, not just, oh well, we heard about this one ticket or something like that.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So and I like you said that we're having this now on the call. We're having this every call and outreach update. That's perfect.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So let's make that a concerted effort. We're going to talk about it each meeting. I'm going to do my part to better communicate upcoming plans we have and getting the feedback in advance from the key stakeholders and making sure it's targeted properly. I think you touched on a tremendous thing with the use cases and communicating that. I think, and I don't mean to put Ken on the spot. I see him on the phone now, but it's that I believe, this is just me from a software perspective, that the more transparent we make all of the changes we're making, the better it is. Now, that doesn't mean, how do I hit 5,000 people with a milestone plan? I don't know yet. We don't know if emailing 5,000 people is effective, but we can at least post it. The VIT members can do their part to help communicate it. But there's absolutely tremendous things of a lot of work that goes in outside of the VIT that we need to just loop into this better. And we know that, so we'll get there.
Yeah, so if you're able to follow up on some survey ideas through these meetings or in between, I'd be interested in hearing more and working more on that so that we can make whatever you're going to do in Kansas City beneficial, but in general for all, especially from my perspective for the weather service regions, to get them more on board or whatever you want to call it.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sorry, David, for interrupting.
Is there an action item then for Todd to develop or to discuss, I guess, survey ideas?
There was an echo there, John. I apologize. I only heard survey ideas.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so do I hear an action item somewhere in there for Todd to develop?
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's me. Yep.
Okay, well, you have an action item then for that. Was there anything else in that very...
No, that's the key.
That's the key.
That and, yeah.
Okay.
And like Brian said, I think having the constant updates on the calls every 2 weeks, and getting the other VIT member participation on that, I think that's key in helping to steer that, and it's only going to improve from where we're at.
Okay.
John, it might be worth something. We can talk about it later, but an action item, something related to the timelines idea that Todd was talking about.
Oh, okay, timeline. So that's the sort of deployment schedule,
Yeah.
aka
Yeah.
roadmap?
Yeah. Something.
Did you want to see an action item on that in that regard, or just?
I'm interested in something. Yeah, in something.
I think so, John. That way we don't
Okay.
want to forget about it. It's something I think we all think's a good idea. We just got to do it.
Sure. For my benefit, is a timeline different than what we use currently called the roadmap, which is a list of issues, when they're going to be deployed, and sort of releases and that sort of thing? Is this different from that?
So no, but I don't think we have a current roadmap that's accurate. So that's kind of part of it. And then secondly, the communication of that.
And the communication. Okay.
Right. So like, there might be individuals that know the pieces of what we're doing when we're doing an individual fix here and there. What we need to do is, in my opinion, is put a ribbon around it, make it incredibly transparent, and it's really getting broadcasted effectively. And we've talked about different ways to do it. And I know Ken's on now, he can jump in, but it's just, again, I fall on at a bare minimum, like a monthly snapshot of what you accomplished the past month and what you plan the next is something is like a good objective to have. And the VIT has a part in that because we're helping rank. I mean, we might submit issues. B, we're ranking them. But like we said, it's certainly less than 50%. I think it's 25% of what is happening.
And C, Todd, we will help in communicating to a degree as well.
To your stakeholders exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what the VIT. Look, I came from. I'm wearing two different hats now. As the NOS rep, when I'm at NOS, I did view that as my job, which is like, okay, I know the VLab team's doing X, Y, and Z. I have to let NOS members know. Now, I will be perfectly honest. I had a real problem at NOS identifying who I should communicate that to, because I didn't have a magic distribution list of all NOS employees who happen to use VLab, right? So there were pockets of it, and you start to find out over time what offices are more heavily, but so that's just part of the challenge we have is who do we hit with it and when and what frequency? And at NOS, it's growing, but there wasn't, and NOS, I'm in IT, and IT is generally not where development happens. It happens in the science branches of NOS. So it was even in a different chain of command, and maybe other offices have that same challenge.
So this is Ken. When I give my briefing in a moment, just hopefully you'll see that things are becoming more transparent, and we're really trying to improve upon things. So.
Cool. All right. Any other questions for Todd? Okay. Well, sort of piggybacking off this idea of improved communications that we were earlier discussing, and thinking back to our previous meeting where Steve Smith gave his update, he suggested that the VIT might benefit from hearing about the VLST's plans to use Twitter. And I think we have Tao on the line, and she's sort of the point person for this effort, and she'll give us a short update. Are you there, Tao?
Yes. Hi, everybody. This is Tao. For the Twitter, we just start to create a Twitter account for VLab, and that's part of the effort to be able to communicate. Because a lot of time, the more channel that we can communicate to the user, the better. And so that many offices has the Twitter, and that'd be great to have a Twitter for VLab. And that's what I did. We have a request for a service account, and then using that as a way to create a Twitter account for VLab, and that is NOAA VLab. So that's the Twitter account, and I already subscribed to many offices that part of NOAA. And part of that is also that one is we get communication from VLab to offices, but the other one is also that we could display a feed in VLab either on a homepage, a public homepage, to get all of the so that the offices can share their news via Twitter, and that part of it is also work in the big picture of IDSS, and so that is for communication. The other way that I was originally thinking about having a Twitter account is a mean to archive the Twitter feed for training purposes. We do have a person at where I worked before. It's to be able to collect, like, archive it, for certain event, and then was replace it over when they simulate the event. And so that could be used in that effort. And the other one that we have is on that bigger scope of things is beside the Twitter, we also using this general service account to hosting YouTube videos that for 1 or 2 minutes VLab training videos, webinar recordings, and different things. And moving forward, what we're gonna do with using the it's to promote subscription to the VLab Twitter and see how we can go from there. That's all I got.
Are there any questions for Tao?
Are you saying there already is a Twitter account, or are you saying you're planning to establish a Twitter account?
We already have one created. We haven't tweeted anything yet, but we have one created.
And who approved the Twitter account?
This is
Steve Smith did.
Yeah, Steve Smith did.
Yeah. We need to talk about this offline.
Okay.
I'll say just in general in relation to communication, I'm not understanding what the need for a Twitter account would be.
I think big picture, we're trying to address, provide different means of communicating with our users for outreach. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say from an internal perspective, Twitter is more for external, communicating with our customers and partners outside of the agency. For internal communication, we have other means to do that.
All right, we'll talk offline.
Yeah.
So Tao, I'm kind of curious, what kind of information do you envision tweeting about? Is it upcoming events or?
Yeah, some upcoming event, and talk about, like, well, we do have some, from the IDSS aspect of things, we have internal communication, but we also reach out to a few, and then that's what we have. It's that what I understand is also reach out to several external offices. So so that's what we want to do, like some news, like maybe outreach event, getting like some basically more of a public event that we have instead of just the just for the VLab user.
Okay, cool. And then one last question. I'm not very familiar with Twitter or even the National Weather Service's use of Twitter, but you mentioned something about archiving Twitter feeds. Why would we archive them?
Oh, this is part of, like, there's a sometimes there is a need for, like, just like to be able to, like, replace an event, like you have like a historical purposes. And
Talking
so,
about like
in order to archive some of the event, you do have to have an account to subscribe to all the feeds
So when
from
you say
other
event,
offices.
you're referring to like say some sort of like maybe a major snow event where the offices are tweeting, and then we would be archiving their tweets so they could play them back in sort of a training mode.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I mean, so that's one thing, is that for the archive, it's not because we want to tweet out something, and that's but a way to display the feed from various different offices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a way for other offices to share their news, to share either scientific news or something, their findings to the tweet, and then we get it. So it could be a one-stop shop for people to come in for those news.
Okay. Cool. Any other questions for Tao? All right. Well, thanks very much, Tao. I really appreciate that. All righty. Are we ready to move on then to a discussion of our efforts to rank a couple VIT tickets?
Yeah, we could probably do that, John. I just wasn't sure if we wanted to go ahead and get Ken back into the loop since we skipped over him, or do we want to just go ahead and keep going down the line?
Perhaps you're right. Let's, Ken, are you available to pick it up with a VIT issues update?
Yep, I'm ready. So,
all right. Take it away.
Okay, let me make sure you're sharing my screen. Maybe you need to share it.
I'm initiating that action now.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
All right. So, as was alluded to earlier, we were spending a fair amount of time trying to get everything in order to be more transparent and better about how we're managing the issues, not only the VIT issues, but all issues coming in through the system. And as Todd indicated, probably about 20% is about right in terms of VIT compared with everything else. So one thing that you can do is you can go into the VLab, go into the RedMind project, and click on Roadmap, and you'll see within the roadmap that we've broken things down based upon releases. So we've got a release for November, and then we have a release for December, and we go further out as well, but we're actively engaged on the November release, and then starting to push things out to the December release, because some of the things that we're working on now, it's unrealistic for that work to be completed within November. So the expectation with regard to a release is that the changes will be deployed out to production within that month. The nature of VLab is it's very modular. So what I mean by that is that, if we're doing work within the ideas marketplace, that's an individual portlet. So we can push changes out to that portlet without it affecting other parts of VLab. So we can do incremental releases. But the way that we're handling this is if an issue is in a release, it's intended to be out to VLab in production within that month. So what we've got right here is our roadmap. So these are both VIT and non-VIT issues. If you want to get a feel for what's the VIT issues that are currently being worked within a release, I created a new filter, and it's called VIT Prioritized and Release. And so all of these are on the bottom left, and you can just click on that, and then it'll come in here and it's going to show you the issues that are being worked. I've got it ordered based upon first, it's grouped by the release. So this is 18.1. You can see that we're currently working 7 issues that have been prioritized by the VIT and have an impact score, and then the order is based upon the impact score. So there's a lot that's being worked right now, and the things that I can tell you are very close is the ability to share Redmine checklists across projects. That's issue 51089. Tom Piliaggi has submitted that for review, and I have to review it. And if everything works as is intended, we can roll that out. That's a Redmine plugin. Using personal pages, we've talked about this before, and I think, did I demonstrate that to you the last time? I can do a quick demonstration. So if we come into here, and if you click on your name, this is in dev right now. It's our intention to get this out this week. And come on, why is it so slow? I've never seen that. So let me try it again. Dev is quite slow, so okay. So I'll come into here and go to my dashboard. And so this has taken a little longer than I initially envisioned, but we've developed some, I'm using we liberally. So our Mike Giebler is the one that developed some portlets that will be advantageous here. And specifically, so this is your personal page. When you get to it, you'll have your communities that you're a member of. You can go to all of those. You'll have the Redmine projects. This is a new portlet that'll list out any of the projects that you're a member of. We've tested to make sure that people that aren't members of Redmine aren't, it'll display an appropriate list. Towards the bottom here, you've got your bookmarks that you can add your own bookmarks to if you want. And then the My Redmine issues would be if you've gotten the issues that are assigned to you, and then if you've got issues reported by you, you can view all those and then click on those and go directly over to Redmine. Likewise, for these, if you click on them, it'll take you right to that project. So that's that. The requests, ignore these error messages, this is test, but this would be the ability to have associates, so you can basically follow other users. And so through social connections, then you can see what people are up to, the activities here, and we've got recent blogs. We're looking at switching up that blogs with something called the wall, which would be all activity going on, and then your connections would be listed here. So that's that, and then you can create blogs. So that's what we're thinking right now with regard to this, and I was doing some testing with blogs. But so that's my dashboard or your personal pages. So if we go back over to here, add a field to identify communities by line office. So I'm going to demonstrate that and also demonstrate the activity level associated with the community. So let's go back over to test, and these are really close to being released as well. So if I go back and go to the home page, close this down and go to the communities page. And what you'll see in here now is that the organizations are listed here and the communities that are associated with those organizations. So if I were to click on NOS, now we haven't gone through all our communities and associated with them with the organizations, but you can see this one. I tied to all the line offices, so this is the only one that shows up. But other communities that would be categorized with the line office would then be selected. So it gives a way for users to come in here, click on the organization, and filter that. If they want to clear it, you can clear the filter, or you can re-click on this. And so anyway, it's a quick way of filtering the communities based upon the line office that they're associated with. And then next, you'll see here this big red 287. So what this is doing is this is organizing or providing a way for users to see how active a community is. And so the size of the icon and the number, if you hover over it, then it gives you an indication of what's been going on within that community. And so these are edits within the community, and you can see there 171 within the forums, web content 3, documents 106, wiki 7, and blog 0. So you can hover over each of these. It allows you then to organize or sort based upon that activity. And that's one of the things that's been long-standing, is give some sort of indication of what's going on. The portlet itself is configurable now in terms of the level, how far back we look, and then also the threshold at which we will change these icons and the colors, from low, medium to high levels of activity. So right in dev, this is our dev system. So dev, not a lot's going on, but when we get this out to production, it's going to look very different. And right now we're looking back 2 months. I believe it's 2 months, maybe 90 days. Let me check really quick. So yeah, it's 90 days, so effectively 3 months. I don't know, we'll have to look at them. We're gonna roll it out to production later this week. It will require a restart, so I'll be doing it in off hours to, so that I don't impact many users. But this is, I think, a pretty cool feature, and this is something that came through the VIT. So any questions on either of those?
I just wanted to say that's cool. Cool.
Yeah. So I think people are gonna like that. So, so that's good. So let's go back to our list, and so we got the activity level. One thing that this is more of an internal thing, and actually I need to look because I think that's incorrectly flagged. We've got a new process internally for using prioritization too. So I've got a 10-point scale, and so it's called VLST priority. So I'm using that as a means to handle everything. So we use the VIT priority for the VIT tickets, but then other things that are coming in, we have to deal with those as well. And so I think this is a case where this should not have an impact score. Initially, I was going to reuse this, but we decided that wasn't a good idea, so I need to clear that out. But that's something where we're using, and when we get external partner requests, today we have to create accounts on both Redmine and VLCS, but this would allow us to just create accounts within VLCS, and then external partners, when they authenticate in Redmine, it would actually go out to VLCS to do the authentication. So we've already done that for Garrett, and it really helped out. So okay, and then there are a couple things that we've pushed out to next month that are VIT related issues, and there will be more. So as we get closer towards this month, we'll do another release planning session and schedule things out for next month. And we're using the priorities for that, as well as, so what I have to weigh is I look at the priority, I look at the level of effort associated with it, and then also, like the number of people being impacted and what else is on our plate. So, and then we're having daily scrums with a subset of the team where we making sure things are on track. Just to give you a sense for what else is going on, we're doing, one of the other things that we have to do is, to keep our products up to date. So Liferay, for example, uses Fixpacks, and so they've released a new one, and we were going through that process right now of testing that out, making sure that our regression tests have no issues, and then moving that forward. So anyway, that's all moving. That's hopefully you'll get a much better sense for the what we've got planned, so, and how things are moving along. Any questions for me?
Ken.
Yes.
So just one real quick one. One of the things we have by way of an action item for the VIT is to solicit their input on how we might format the activities information. So, you know, within the, I guess it's the communities portlet. Are we still looking for input on that? Because I haven't officially asked folks for their suggestions on how we can visualize it, so to speak. Have we come to some agreement on
I think we're okay. So we're going to roll it out like this initially. We're always looking for ways to improve upon that. So what we decided upon is we have one number that gives basically a summary of the number of edits, and it's smart too. It's not like if someone goes in and saves 3 different versions of something within 10 minutes, it's not going to count that as 3 edits. And we've done some testing with that. But I think the visual indicator in terms of the size as well as the color, and then this number, and then with the hover, I think that that should be a good first start. And then we'll need to make sure that we have some documentation that kind of gives, because I would say, well, what's 171 mean for forums? And so we need to convey that within our user's guide. But if there are other ways that you guys think can improve upon it, please let us know.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, I think, John, I think it's okay too in terms of like an Agile framework where we provide the requirement, the team developed to that requirement, and if we have any other feedback, we can sort of iterate on it, just like we had with some of the more recent issues, whether it be a portlet, announcement portlet, or other things. So it's a good thing to iterate on as long as we're happy with the initial thing, and that's what you usually do when you ask. You send out the emails to the team. Here, this has been addressed. Is there any problems that are stopping it from being implemented?
Right. Correct. We do that for sure.
Yeah, and expect we're trying to improve upon too. With this Scrum meeting, what ends up happening is a developer ends up taking on an issue, and then we've broken it down into increments so that the expectation is that we'll get it out that month. They're supposed to be then working with the stakeholder or the user that's requested this information. So if you've made a submission for a request that's gone through the vid and it's been prioritized, don't be surprised if we reach out to you, because it's our intention to work closely with you to make sure that we get it right. It's if there are questions about requirements or refinement, we would work with you on that to get it to the point where we think it's good and you agree, and then we can move it forward and it would come out to the vid as a whole. So that's it. Thanks.
All righty.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Is it possible for the next thing for us to adjust and discuss the chair and co-chair nominations and then go into the rankings? Is that okay if we move that up?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So right now, the only person that spoke up about possibly being the chair for FY19 has been Todd, and we're still looking for somebody that would be willing to be a co-chair. And so if there's somebody that's either on the call now and you're interested, if you've got questions, feel free to let Brian or myself know. But as of right now, we only have Todd as showing interest in being the chair for this current fiscal year going into next year. So I guess we can open that up for any discussion or questions that anybody might have.
A question that often comes up is just, what sort of level of involvement would I be into if I were the chair or the vice chair? Would you like to give a quick overview, David, of what you feel are the typical levels of effort to be the chair?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I started into this, I was probably more overwhelmed. As I've gone through it, I've become a little more acclimated, and there's not a ton of work that's involved with this. It's mainly working with John and making sure that the agenda gets set, and making sure that if we have anything that we want to bring up, to bring those items up. But there's not a really large time sink with those responsibilities. Sure, making the concerted effort for every 2 weeks to be on the calls, that can be a bit of a challenge at times, but that's why we have a co-chair, in that if one can't be on, usually the other can. And so there's been times where I've not been able to be on a call and Brian could, or Brian isn't available, but I am. So it's really not a large time commitment, but it is a good thing to be involved in. And so if there is anybody that's interested in that, I can either answer his questions online during the call now or offline as well.
One thing I'll add is that since we've instituted the VIT, the chair and co-chair have primarily or have exclusively been from the National Weather Service. And with Todd now as a volunteer, that opens it up to someone from another line office. And we would be very happy if we had yet another person from a non-National Weather Service organization volunteer, so that it truly will represent all VLab users. And with our push being made to do outreach, I think there'd be nothing better to set the example than having the leadership of the VIT come from outside the National Weather Service, where perhaps usage is not as high as it is within the National Weather Service. So for those of you from one of the other line offices, give it a nice hard thought about becoming one of the leaders.
And John, maybe what we could do after the call, or maybe tomorrow, send out an email reminder to all VIT members that are interested. That might be a good reminder as well.
Okay.
That's
Cool.
all I had.
Okay. Just one agenda item. So those who might be following along may have seen that Ken was on the hook to give us a update on the category navigation portlet, and he snuck that in during his update on proposed changes for November. So if anyone has any questions about the category navigation portlet that he showed how to basically filter communities based on line office, let us know. Otherwise, we'll consider that item having been checked off. Perfect. Okay, so it looks like we have some time to quickly go over the status of our efforts to rank 2. Oops, that's not it. That's not it either. Hold on. I may just have to open it up in a separate one here. Let's see. So if we go to, that's not it. Okay. 1 second. And the ranking spreadsheet. Okay. So as soon as that comes up, thanks to our friends at Google, we will be able to see that we have 2 tickets currently being ranked. And we have a decent amount of input. Couple notable exceptions are NESDIS and looks like Alaska region has still failed to weigh in yet. But conceivably with this degree of input, we may be able to come to consensus on a impact score. Would we like to take the input thus received and consider that our consensus ranking?
Remind me, I should know this. And Brian said this earlier. It's Weather Service HQ that does not have a rep at all, correct? So like they never rank.
Correct. That's right. So they have never ranked. Just so folks know that they do have a representative from a practical perspective, and that is me. So if we receive any suggestions that come from members within headquarters, I'm the one who will champion their suggestions before the VIT. Okay. But I'm not a voting member, obviously. I will also mention, while we're on the subject, just quickly, we are working with NESDIS. Those who are regular participants in this meeting may recall that Steve Mango had mentioned that his role on the VIT may be changing here in the near future, and I suspect we may have, basically run into that here, because he has not been participating in meetings, nor has he been ranking. So I'm trying to work with him and his, I guess, manager to basically find somebody else, perhaps. But more on that at probably our next meeting.
Yeah, maybe just close it, John, after today, close the business. I think Nate from Alaska is on the call.
Yes.
I think, or at least he's on the VLab. He's on the go-to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe give to the end of the close of business today, especially if Nesdis is probably not going to rank anything.
I suspect you're right. Okay, that sounds like a way forward. And at the end of the day, I will go ahead and make those impact score changes to our tickets.
And John, we had kind of talked about this before, but the VLab hosting video content. I think what we basically said was we wanted to see what the rankings came in, and I think they came in as we expected. And I think that probably, once that gets closed, we might want to have an action item, something to do with, we want to have further discussion on this as a sort of strategic initiative.
Okay. Got it. When hosting. Got it. All righty. Cool. So I think we have time to quickly introduce to folks two candidate issues. Oops. Where did it go? Up. Just one more second. Da-da-da-da. All right. And we have our candidate issues. So I had hoped to have Tom Filiaggi present these two items. He's our expert on where they came from and how we might go ahead and rectify them. But in his absence, I will go ahead and do my best to give you an introduction to these two prospective candidates. The first one is let's go with the first one on the bottom here, 57059. So there's within a ticket, there are categories, and that field, you set up what you want the options to be. So you can have, like, say, 4 or 5 different categories, and you predefine what they are, and then when you select that drop down, the user sees them and can select one or more one of them. So, but unfortunately, when you do that at the project level, any child projects that you have do not benefit from the work you did to set up the categories in the parent project. So this particular issue is proposing that an enhancement be made to Redmine to allow a user to create the parent categories, and then any subsequent sub-projects or child projects would be able to use those same categories. So fairly straightforward and simple. The second issue that has been proposed as a candidate involves the use of issue templates. And my understanding of this is that an issue has a certain look and feel, and within Redmine you can create a template to sort of re-wicker how those how it looks in terms of its appearance to users. And we currently don't have that capability, but we would envision implementing a what do you call those? A plugin to basically implement such a change. So does anyone have a question on either of these two proposed VIT issues? Okay. We are proposing that they be nominated as VIT issues. Does anybody object to doing that? So that these would now be VIT endorsed issues. All righty. Hearing no objection, the record will show that the VIT has endorsed issue 57298 and issue 57059. All right. That brings us really to the open forum with a couple minutes. Does anyone have anything we'd like to discuss? All right. Shall we do a quick review of the open action items? So this is the first one we discussed, and apparently at this point anyway, the opportunity to provide feedback will come when we finally close out the activity level change that Ken discussed earlier. So we will close this one out, this action item out for this meeting. Ken also demonstrated the category navigation portlet today during his discussion of changes planned for November. So we will close that one out as well. The let's see, VIT members, we have requested that they provide us input on the Gantt chart plugin. So I'll send out a reminder on that. Tal gave us the discussion today on Twitter, so we can close that out. Post an announcement detailing recent changes. So this is something that perhaps Ken can clarify for us. Have we or are we planning to do any announcement on changes made to Redmine?
Yeah, so it's our intention that with the releases we'll have release notes, and so we'll be advertising when we deploy out changes to Redmine as well as to VLCS with the nature of the changes, and so yes, we will be announcing details regarding changes within Redmine, all of VLab actually. So
sure. So we will close that one out because an effort has been made to update users on the changes that we made, both to the the landing page as well as to the Redmine look and feel. So I think we've actually accomplished that one. Alrighty, there's one more open one here. Is subscription manager is still undergoing changes, and I suspect fairly soon we will have an opportunity to see a demo of that at our next meeting, perhaps. Any questions on the tickets? I mean, the action items. So I think we're at the top of the hour. I'm going to turn it back over to David, perhaps to close out the meeting.
All right, thanks, John, and again, thanks for everybody for being on the call today. And it was definitely a full agenda and a full hour. And to reiterate what I said earlier, if there is anybody that has questions about being co-chair, we'll send out the reminder email, or John will. But feel free to contact either Brian or myself, and we'd be more than happy to kind of answer any questions or concerns you might have about filling in that role. But otherwise, everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll chat with everybody in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.